my other computer stopped recording entirely for some reason. So I'm recording this by two different means today. Okay, so we're going to pick up. We left off, talked about Eowyn and Merry killing the captain of the Nine, the Witch King of Angmar. The chapter after that is the Pyre of Denethor, okay, where Denethor takes Faramir up to the halls of the dead, essentially, and is getting ready to immolate himself and his son. Gandalf arrives, saves the situation, takes Faramir away, and Denethor lights the fire holding the Palantir of Minas Tirith. And we're told anybody who looked into that stone anytime in the future after that, all they saw was the hands in kind of Denethor burning. Okay? So, next chapter is Houses of Healing. Mary's brought into the Houses of Healing. Faramir's there. Eowyn's there. And Yorith, page 860, the eldest of the women who served in the house, we're told, says, alas that he should die, that is Faramir, or if he should die. And then she says, if only there were a king in Gondor, because the hands of a king are the hands of a healer. And Gandalf kind of goes, I should have thought of that. And he sends for Aragorn. Okay. Page 861. There's some debate as to how Aragorn should enter the city. Imrahil and a couple others say, you've already announced yourself, right? He unfurled the flag on the Corsairs of Umbar that had, gotta get this right, had the white tree of Gondor, the stars, and the crown, okay? So, only the king can fly that, so they know the king is there. But Aragorn comes in instead as the leader of the Rangers of the North. He asks for Athelas, the same herb that he used to partially heal, mostly heal, Frodo on Weathertop when he had been stabbed by the Witch King of Angmar. And he gets that and he breaks it up, and puts it in water and such. There's some other talk going on first. And bottom of 865, top of 866. So he puts it in hot water and steam, and the aroma rises. This is like, essential oil therapy in Middle-earth. And Faramir stirs, we're told, 866. And a light of knowledge and love was kindled in his eyes. And he spoke softly, my lord, you called me, I come. What does the king command? What's the light of knowledge? He recognizes this is the king. He's never seen, seemingly, Aragorn before. In medieval literature, there's always some quality about a king, even if the king has not been enthroned, even if the king is a wandering vagrant, as happens in some of the stories in the Middle Ages. There is something about him that makes certain individuals look at the king and be able to recognize this is the king. Okay? Aragorn has that. For those who have eyes to see. Faramir obviously does. Aragorn says, walk no more in the shadows. In other words, don't fall back into a deep unconscious kind of sleep, etc. You're weary, rest, be ready when I return. I will, Lord, for who would lie idle when the king has returned? Now, Yorith is in the room when he says that. And she hears, the king. She probably goes to the door, and there's somebody standing there. He's the king. And it spreads like wildfire throughout Minas Tirith. Then he goes to Eowyn. He says, she was pitted against the strength. She was not strong enough to handle. Okay? Those who take a weapon to such an enemy must be sterner than steel if the very shock shall not destroy them, blah, blah, blah. Okay? He says, it's an evil doom that put her in his path. When I first looked at her, bottom of 866, and perceived her unhappiness, it seemed to me I saw a white flower standing straight and proud, shapely as a lily, and yet knew it was hard as if wrought by elf rights out of steel. He compares her to a beautiful flower and says, but man, she was hard as steel. And I don't think he just means kind of like visually. I mean, inside, she was hard. Okay? And he says, or maybe like a frost that had turned its sap to ice. Her malady begins long before I met her. Am I right, Amer? Amer says, kind of beats me. I never saw any problem until she first saw you. Bottom of 866. And Gandalf enters the conversation essentially to remove any taint of blame from Aragorn, and Éomer made clear not to lay any taint of blame on Éomer, but also to suggest to Éomer, you might not have been all that privy, all that up on what was going on with Éowyn. Why? He says, you had horses and deeds of arms and free fields, but she, born in the body of a maid, had a spirit and courage at least the match of yours. If she had been born in the body of a man, she'd have been out there, doing stuff with horses and killing enemies, etc. too. Yet she was doomed to wait upon an old man. Her uncle, her uncle Theoden, whom she loved as a father, and watch him falling into a mean, dishonored dotage. Notice, he doesn't say it, but it's implied. And she couldn't do anything about it. Okay? Her part seemed to her more ignoble than that of the staff he leaned on. She had no honor, no glory in attending to Theoden. Because, not just because of attending to him, but because of the state he was in. I'll tell you right now, I'm not choking up, it's my throat real scratchy. 2 years ago when my dad died, he had both Alzheimer's, and we discovered in literally like 2 years and a week ago, he had a brain tumor. It's glioblastoma. You get one, it's a death sentence. There's nothing you can really do about it. Okay? He was 85, 86, 87, something. Good luck. Anyways, where was I going with all that? Oh, I know. So, lived out in Oregon. I flew out a couple times. This is 2020, all classes were online and stuff. I could do them anywhere. And I literally did it from the middle of his yard, one of them. But going out there and helping take care of him so it didn't all fall on just my sister and brother-in-law. All of us went out there, there were 5 kids in the family, and spent about a week, 2 different times. It's a very ignoble thing to have to take care of someone in that kind of situation, because you're doing the stuff that quote-unquote techs are doing in the hospital for people who are in the hospital for weeks and months on end, changing diapers, wiping butts, the whole 9 yards. The kinds of things children aren't supposed to do for their parents. That's the things parents do for their younger children, And then he pulls out, then he gets to his real point. You think Wormtongue only poisoned Theoden's ears? No, he says, think of what Saruman had to say. The teacher of Wormtongue. I do not doubt that Wormtongue at home wrapped their terms and their meaning in terms more cunning. He says, if your sister's love for you and her will still bent to her duty had not restrained her lips, you might have heard even such things as these escape them. That is, you might have heard your sister say stuff about the house of Eorl being a thatched barn where brigands drink in the reek. Her mind was poisoned by Wormtongue. And I think part of the poisoning, Gandalf doesn't say this, I think part of the poisoning could also have been, you should be out with your brother. You should be out fighting In other words, Wormtongue would do anything to be able to screw up her mind. Okay? Then Éomer was silent, looked on his sister, says things, and Aragorn says, I saw what you saw. This is the first time Aragorn has spoken since Éomer said, I don't know what you talked about. First time I noticed any problem was after she met you. He says, I saw that. Few other griefs have been as hard for me as knowing what? What does Aragorn know? What did Aragorn see when he met Éowyn? She fell head over heels for him. And he could not reciprocate. Why? What did he tell her? If he could do what he wanted to do, if he could throw away his charge, where would he be? Up in Rivendell, where his heart was. Arwen. He says, I can heal her body, maybe. But I can't heal her mind or heart. He says, you're going to have to do that. Okay? So he calls her forth, calls her out. And Éomer stays with her. Okay? Then he goes to Merry, brings Merry back out. We get to chapter The Last Debate. And the last debate, we're going to make it really short because we're going to finish today. Pages 878 and following. What's the debate over? Or what's the debate about? Okay, we want a battle. How do we win the war? How do we win the big thing? Can they do it by feat of arms? By martial prowess? No, they cannot. Gandalf says, we can't defeat Sauron that way. We're going to lose. You know, if it were totally, let's say by soldiers' power, not military weaponry, could the United States, by numbers of troops, could the United States defeat China? By numbers of troops? No. They've got like 1 million, 2 million man army. We're not even close. I mean, we could call up all the National Guard, but what could China do? They got 1.7 billion people, folks. We've got 335 million, and not all of those are obviously able and equipped to go in. Even if we took all 335 million, they still probably have 500 million that they could put a gun in the hands. Just sheer numbers, okay? We can't win that, Gandalf says. All right, so that's not an option. So what's another option? Let's build up Fortress Gondor, or even retreat farther and really build up our fortresses. Is that going to win? Gandalf and Aragorn both say ultimately, no. Why? Because someone's just going to keep making more and more. He can just throw wave after wave after wave, and eventually, okay? What's the third option?
Call on help.
Pardon?
Call on help.
Call on help? How? Like dial up Valinor? Can we have the gods please? Hotline to... Nope, not their problem. I mean, someone actually suggests, let's send message to the West. And they're going to go, it's going to be, not here, return to sender. Okay? So that's not an option. What's the only way they can win? If the ring is destroyed. What's the only way Frodo's going to get the ring destroyed? If Sauron has no idea that the ring is coming, and if we create the world's greatest diversionary tactic, if we draw his attention out. How do they draw his attention out?
They go to him.
Let's march to the Black Gates. We've seen the Black Gates before, right? They're big, massive Black Gates between, like a cleft in the mountain. Because Frodo and Sam were there with Gollum. If we do that, what will Sauron do? He'll send all his forces there. And that's where Gandalf says, Aragorn, am I right in thinking that you've already shown Sauron yourself? And he says, yes. He's already told Legolas and Gimli, right? And he says, he, Sauron, saw me in fashion other than you see me now. He made Sauron because he says, Aragorn says, he controlled the will of the Palantir. He forced Sauron to see him as he wanted to be seen. Remember, you can't make a Palantir lie. Okay? The Palantirs belong to the King of Gondor. So Aragorn has that authority. He said, maybe I didn't have the power. How did Sauron see him? King of Gondor, heir of Isildur and Elendil, the guy who cut the ring off his finger or off his hand. He sees him dressed to the hilt as the king. That kind of puts a little bit of fear in Sauron. That's why he's already attacked the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. See, he attacked too soon. And what has happened as a result? He's lost his most feared combatant, the captain of the Nine. Okay? So, let's challenge him. Let's ride to the Black Gate. And it's not just Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf, Éomer. They take an army of 10,000 or so. So, you can get the nice CGI effects for the film. Okay? And they go out and they do that all so that Sauron will focus all of his attention there. Okay? So, chapter 10, Black Gate opens. Notice as they make their way, even as they're riding between Gondor and the Black Gate, there's a herald out in front blowing his little horn, literally blowing a horn, and saying, kind of like, make way for the King of Gondor and the Lords of the West, and blah, 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 blah. That's all just their way of drawing Sauron's attention. Okay? So, the mouth of Sauron, he's also called the lieutenant of Sauron. He's like the ambassador, or maybe the vice president, comes out and shows them what? Frodo's mithril coat, okay, his elven cloak, a short sword, and something else. Can't remember the fourth thing. Who is with them? Who goes, ah? Pippin. Pippin sees those, and he immediately makes an assumption. It's not a stupid assumption. What does he assume? One, Frodo at least has been captured. Okay? And Gandalf's like, shh. Name your terms, because he said, here are my terms. What are the terms? Total and unconditional surrender. I mean, it's pretty much it. Gandalf says no. 890-91. In fact, he doesn't just say no. He strides forward, takes them from the mouth of Sauron, says, these we will take in memory of our friends. Get you gone. If I see you again, I'm going to zap you, The Black Gate opens and we get the description of what? The phrase, all hell breaks loose, is pretty good, accurate description. The gate opens and all the hordes of hell come out. You've got orcs, you have men, slaves. These aren't men who willfully and gladly serve Sauron. These are men who have been pressed into service. You have trolls, okay? I think there are even wolves, wards as they're called. And it's not going well towards the end of the chapter. We see Pippin. Pippin's there, he's got his little sword, keep in mind, little arm, little sword, fighting against people with bigger arms and bigger swords. And he falls, and a troll falls on him. Kind of like the troll in, Harry Potter. Falls on him, and as he's passing out, he hears, the eagles are coming, the eagles are coming. And he thinks, wait, that's the wrong story. That's Bilbo's story. Because that happens in The Hobbit. Book 5 ends. So book 5 ends with seemingly the lords and armies of the West losing, except for that phrase, the eagles are coming. And Tolkien takes us all the way back to the Tower of Cirith Ungol. Why? Because when we left off a year ago, we left with Sam thinking, Sam, you're a damn idiot. Because he left Frodo thinking Frodo was dead and then discovered Frodo wasn't dead. Now we go back to Sam. Okay? And pick up with 901. I got to do this part more quickly than I did my first class. Bottom of 900. He thinks of the ring. He thinks no comfort there, only danger. As the ring, the narrator tells us, as the ring gets closer and closer to Mount Doom, what happens? It gets physically heavier and its power gets stronger and stronger. Its temptation to be used gets stronger and stronger. And we're told, it became more fell, untamable, save by some mighty will. Guess who has that mighty will? Sam does. Not mighty in the sense of, I'm going to be a great mighty warrior. It's a mighty will in another sense. Page 901. I'd never thought about, I'd literally, I don't think, thought about this until this morning when I was teaching this. I think for at least the last 5 years, and it might be for the last 25 years of teaching this course, the top of 901, when Sam has these visions, I'm almost positive that I've always said, it's because he's wearing the ring. He's not. He doesn't have the ring on. And he thinks. He has these visions of what? Wild fantasies arose in his mind. He saw Samwise, the strong hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across the darkened land. And he turns Mordor into what? Like the Garden of Eden. Just flowers and trees everywhere. In that hour of trial, it was the love of his master that helped most to hold him firm, but also deep down in him lived, still unconquered, his plain hobbit sense. And what is his plain hobbit sense? He knew in the core of his heart he was not large enough to bear such a burden, meaning the ring, not to create Eden. Okay? Even if such visions were not a mere cheat to betray him. That is, even if the visions were real, and he could really do this, he's not big enough. He's not strong enough. He's not great enough. He's not mighty enough or powerful enough to bear such a burden. Notice what the mighty will is that saves him. It's his good old ordinary hobbit sense. And what does Tolkien really mean by that? I know he gives us an example, but what does he really mean by it? I'm not made for this. I'm a nobody. I'm just a little person in a very big world. That's what he means. Okay? What is it that will satisfy Sam? Or what is Sam made for? According to what he thinks.
Living in the Shire.
The one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due. That's it. In one of his letters, Tolkien says, I am indeed a hobbit. I have a book in my office written by some guy about Tolkien that has that as its title. What does he mean? I don't care about all the policies of the great and mighty over there, in London, in Washington, in Moscow, in Beijing, wherever. Just give me my little plot of land and leave me the blank alone. That's it. And, the small garden that's being talked about. Go to London sometime. Take a study abroad course. You can get scholarships and stuff to help fund it. Go to London and walk around in some of the residential areas. And what we call yards, the Brits call gardens. When we say yard, that almost always implies grass. It doesn't there. There might be grass, but they'll talk about the front garden and the back garden. And the front gardens, I am not kidding, in most of the places I've seen, and I've walked all over London, are about no bigger than this, from where I am to that wall into that wall. Okay? And a lot of the back gardens aren't that much bigger. Very, very small houses. That's kind of what's implied. It's the amount of the plot of land that one person could take care of without having to overtax him or herself. Okay? Notice, not a garden swollen to a realm. Shakespeare loves the image of England as a garden. And the king as the gardener, the one in charge. That's not what Sam wants. Just give me my little plot of land and leave me alone. Just let us do our hobbit stuff. Okay? So he goes on. Besides, it's all a trick. If I claim the ring, what's going to happen? He'd spot me quick. Okay? So, Sam goes on. He notices there's a bunch of dead orcs. He hears Gorbag and Shagrat, and he plays along with their fears because they think there's a mighty elf lord loose. And Sam's like, yes, there is a mighty elf lord, you know. They end up killing each other. Page... Where is it? 908, Sam starts to sing a song. He hears a response. And 911, he finds Frodo and rescues him. Okay? Frodo says, exact middle of 911, they've taken everything, Sam. Everything I had. Do you understand? Everything. He cowers on the floor. That is, he kind of bends over, burying his head, as his own words brought home to him the fullness of the disaster, and despair overwhelmed him. The quest has failed. Even if we get out of here, we can't escape. Only elves can escape. So there's two different escapes. Even if we get out of here, and I think he means where they are physically right now, we can't escape. And I think he means we can't escape back out of Mordor. But he also means we can't escape Middle Earth. Only the elves can. Sauron will win. Period. Turn out the lights. Not everything, Mr. Frodo. It hasn't failed. Not yet. It might still, but not today. I took it. Begging your pardon. I've kept it safe. I know you have to get it back. You've got it. Give it to me. Give it to me. You know. And Frodo becomes all Gollum-y. Sam gives it back to him. Sam says, maybe I can help you carry it. No, you can't. You know. Frodo realizes it's not me speaking, Sam. That's the ring, etc. So they leave. And now we're going to go quickly. Chapter 2, Land of Shadow, page 918. So they've left the Morgul Vale. They're now in Mordor. Or they left, Cirith Ungol. They've gone down into the Morgul Vale and into Mordor. Okay? He mentions Gollum's still alive. So we have him to deal with. And there's orcs all over the place. And he says, I would carry you on my back if I could. All right? Bottom of that page, before the little break. Frodo says, as I lay in prison, Sam, I tried to remember the Brandywin, and Woody Inn, and the water running through the middle of Hobbiton. I can't see them now. Why not? What does he see? When he closes his eyes, what does he see? He sees this ring of fire. It's consuming him. Sam says, now I heard you talking about water and light. And he says, oh, if the lady could hear us now. What lady? Galadriel. I'd say to her, all I want is light and water. Why? Light, to show us where we're going. Water, because you can't live without it. Pretty simple. Top of the next page. They've noticed the Black Rider fly over. And we're told, about 3 lines down, away to their left, southward, against a sky that was turning gray, the peaks and high ridges of the great range began to appear dark and black, visible shapes. Light was growing behind them. Slowly it crept towards the north. There was battle far above in the high spaces of the air. The billowing clouds of Mordor were being driven back, their edges tattering as a wind out of the living world came up and swept the fumes and smokes towards the dark land of their home. Hold on. Didn't catch that part before. To their left, southward. And what happens? So notice they can now, to their left, looking south from where they are. Okay? So if south is that way, east is that, I'm all mixed up. North is Barad-dûr in the gate, the Black Gate, where the riders are, forces of the West are fighting, or where they're going to be. Okay? And what happens? From the south, the darkness that's been pouring out of Mordor starts to recede, so that they can now see the outline of the mountains again. Notice, before there was light, it was what? Pitch black. Like, can't see your finger. Okay? Look, Mr. Frodo, look, the wind's changed. Something's happening. He's not having it all his way. His darkness is breaking up out in the world there. Okay? Pause for a moment. There was battle far above in the high spaces of the air. How? Have the lords of the West somehow found a means to fight in the air against the Black Riders? Are they all mounted on eagles? No, they are not. This is something else going on. I think, I could be wrong, this is part of Tolkien's Catholic Christianity coming in, about there being a battle in the air, in the heavens, so to speak. That's not the one I want to write on that board with. That would not be good. Manwë, the chief of the Valar, the gods that live in Valinor, he's the sky god. His representatives, so to speak, I say so to speak because they do not say, I got a call from Manwë and here's what he wants me to do, but kind of his representatives, or his emblems, if you want, in Middle Earth, are the eagles. Okay? So he's the quote-unquote god of the air, sky. What is away southward? Well, the sea is southwest from where they are, and you go all the way over there, and it's Valinor. I think, I could be entirely wrong, that this is Manwë kind of, helping a little bit, giving a little nudge, so to speak. And we're told it's the morning of the 15th of March. Theoden lay dying on the Pelennor fields. And what happens? As Frodo and Sam stood and gazed, the rim of light spread all along the line of the Ephel-Duath. That's the mountain range, I did this before. That's this mountain range that leads into Mordor, or it keeps Mordor out from everywhere else. And then they saw a shape moving at a great speed out of the west, at first only a black speck against the glimmering strip above the mountaintops, but growing until it plunged like a bolt into the dark canopy and passed high above them. And they hear a cry of a Nazgul, and were told the Lord of the Ring race had met his doom. That was the Lord of the Ring race. That was him disappearing from the world. He didn't fly to Mordor and join with Sauron. That was his, Sam, something's happening. Frodo, not enough. Okay? So, he said, if I could ask the Lady Galadriel, light and water. They've had light. Bottom of 920, they hear a trickle. Water. Now they have water. And Sam says, I'll drink it first. Frodo, there's room for, no, you don't understand. Sam wants, if it's bitter, that it's poisoned. He wants to be the one to die. Okay? So, they go on. And we're going to skip a bunch. They run into orcs. They kind of join the marching along for a while and then ditch them. And go to chapter 3, Mount Doom. Bottom of the first page. Sam looks where they are to Mount Doom, and he estimates 50 miles. That's going to take a week if it takes a day. I don't know if you've ever walked 50 miles. Like, I don't mean like in one time. My dad and brother and I went on a couple of backpacking trips. I think the longest one was 49 miles, and that was in like 4.5 days, 4 days. One of our days, I think the longest one was 13 miles. Now this is the high Sierras, and so you're, up and down. But I'm 5'10". How big are Frodo and Sam? Maybe 3 feet. So how long are their legs? And he says 49 miles, that's going to be a week. That's 9 miles a day on little short stumpy legs. That's a lot of walking. Okay? He says things aren't going well. And we're told it came home to him at last. What? What does Sam finally realize? We're not going to live. We have enough food and water to get us there. We don't have anything to get us back. So that was the job I felt, top of 934. I felt I had to do when I started, to help Mr. Frodo to the last step and then die with him? Notice, question mark, not exclamation. Hell, if that's the job I must do, then I must do it. But what does he wish he could still see? Or who does he wish he could still see? It's the first time she's mentioned. Rosie Cotton. Who's Rosie Cotton? Somebody Sam's been thinking about a bit, apparently. But I can't think somehow that Gandalf would have sent Mr. Frodo on this errand if there hadn't been any hope of his ever coming back at all. He wouldn't have sent us if he didn't think we could somehow return. Notice, that idea is what gives Sam a little bit of hope. But even as hope died in Sam, or seemed to die, it was turned to a new strength. Sam's plain hobbit face grew stern, almost grim, as the will hardened in him. And it's as if he turned into some creature of stone and steel. Why? It's hard to wear down stone and steel. It's like he's going to turn into the Terminator. And he's going to carry him there. And we're going to achieve this quest no matter what. And with a new sense of responsibility, he brought his eyes back to the ground at hand, near at hand, studying the next move. What does that mean, studying the next move? What's he been looking at and thinking about? Mount Doom, 50 miles away. He stops looking way off in the distance at the destination their journey will take them to, and looks at what instead.
What's right in front of us?
Keep going. How does he get from what's right in front of him to there? First step. How are they going to get there? You got to take that first step. How do you stop smoking? That first cigarette that you don't smoke. How do you stop drinking? That first drink you don't take. How any vice that you want to get rid of, the first time you stop doing it. And then maybe, hopefully, the second one is a little bit easier. Proverbially, okay? So, they go on. We're skipping a bunch again. 937. Sam wakes up Frodo. It's another day. Got to keep going. Frodo says, I can't manage it. It's too heavy. Sam says, I can help. Maybe I can carry it for a while. No, you can't do that, Sam. Middle of the page. It is too late now, Sam dear. You can't help me in that way again. I am almost in its power now. Notice, if he can say, I'm almost in its power, that means what? He's not entirely, okay, good. I could not give it up. And if you tried to take it, I should go mad. So what has he just admitted?
Starting to possess him.
Okay, what else? I could not give it up.
It's going to have to be taken from him if it's going to get destroyed.
Let's say they've got 40 more miles. When we get that 40 miles done, and I'm standing there at the 7th hour, the cracks of doom, what am I not going to do, Sam? I'm not going to give it up. The quest is what? At this point, it's failed, man. This isn't like you got 59.4 points on an exam, and 59.5 means you barely passed. This is a 0. This is failed. Because there's no, curve, there's no partial grading. It's you achieve or you lose. That's it. Frodo has just admitted, I can't do it. I think Sam doesn't realize the point of what he's saying. Sam nods. I understand. He says, but there's other things we can do without. In other words, let's lighten our loads even more. Okay? So they essentially throw everything away they don't actually physically need. They keep going. I'm not going to talk about that. Bottom of 940, top of 941. Hold on. Yeah, Sam says, I told myself I'd carry him if I had to, and I will. So he says, come on, Mr. Frodo. And he gives Frodo a piggyback ride. They're almost to the base of the mountain. They get to the base of the mountain. And we're told, I skipped the passage. Nope, here it is. Very bottom of 942, top of 943. They pause. Okay. We get a description of them crawling like insects up the mountain, and we get an image of Sauron at Barad-dûr. Okay. And the eye looking out to the north, or looking out to where the captains of the west are, kept standing at bay. And Frodo says, help me, Sam, help me, Sam. Because his hand is moving towards the ring. Frodo grabs his hand, pulls it away. And we're told, middle of the page, a sudden weight smote him, Sam, and he crashed forward, tearing the backs of his hands that still clasped his master's. Then he knew what had happened, for above him, as he lay, he heard a hated voice. Wicked master, cheats Smeagol. No, he mustn't go that way. He mustn't have precious. Give it to Smeagol. Yes, give it to us. Give it to us. What was Gollum's promise? To serve the master of the precious was part of it. What was the other part? Never to allow Sauron to have the ring. Okay? Sam heaves himself up, pulls his sword, and he sees Frodo. And Frodo yells, bottom of 943, down, 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 you creeping thing, and out of my path, your time is at an end. You cannot betray me or slay me now. Notice, when Frodo says this, his hand is clasping his breast, and beneath his leather shirt is the ring. And Frodo says this. Top of the next page. Suddenly, as before under the eaves of the Emmy-mule, Sam sees two rivals with other vision. Like when Legolas and Gimli saw Eomer and Aragorn with other vision. And Aragorn was what? Aragorn, son of Arathorn, descended, blah, 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 blah. And when Pippin sees Gandalf and Denethor with other vision, and he perceives Gandalf's hidden might and majesty. Now, Sam has this experience for the second time. A crouching shape, scarcely more than the shadow of a living thing, a creature now wholly ruined and defeated, yet filled with a hideous lust and rage, and before it stood stern, untouchable now by pity. A figure robed in white, but at its breast it held a wheel of fire. And out of the fire there spoke a commanding voice. Before we talk about the voice, why does Frodo appear dressed in white? Possibly. What does everybody else look like who's faded away? They're wearing dark clothes. Okay. A robe in white often implies what? Or a white robe. In the book of Revelation, everyone who overcomes is given a white robe. Why? Because the white robe symbolizes part of that having overcome temptation, tribulation, trial, all that kind of stuff. Has Frodo overcome it? Has he put down the temptation finally? No. That's why, I'm literally asking, why is he wearing white? Because it doesn't, at this point, make sense to me unless it's because of the idea of purifying. Okay? So now, out of the wheel of fire, this voice speaks. Begone and trouble me no more. If you touch me ever again, you shall be cast yourself into the fire of doom. Where's the voice come from? I know it comes from the wheel of fire. Where's the voice come from? Is it Frodo's voice coming through the ring? Or is this the ring speaking? Keep in mind, where is the ring right now? It's like 20 yards, 40 yards away from where it was created. It's almost at the peak of its power. We're told rings of power have a way of trying to get back to where they belong. And it's kind of implied they are sentient of sorts. So is the ring using Frodo's voice to speak? And notice what it says. You touch me, you will be destroyed. Gollum backs away. Sam says, watch out, he'll spring. You go on, Mr. Frodo, I'll take care of him. Frodo goes on. Now, Sam says, don't kill us. Don't hurt us with nasty, cruel steel. Let us live, yes, live, just a little longer. What does that tell us Gollum knows? Just a little longer. Lost, lost, we're lost. And when precious goes, we'll die, yes, die into the dust. Do you think Gollum believes? Do you think Gollum thinks Frodo is going to destroy the ring? I don't. I think Gollum knows exactly what is in Frodo's mind. Why? Because Gollum carried the ring for, at this point, over 500 years. He's over 600 years old now. Bilbo had it for 61 years, so 540 years, something like that. He had it. Die, die into the dust. Gollum, I think, knows his seconds are counting. Sam's hand wavers. It would be just to slay this treacherous, murderous creature. Just and many times deserved. And we could go back to the shadow of the past. He is only an enemy and deserves death. But deep in his heart, there was something that restrained him. Notice, in his heart, not in his mind, because it's the mind that says he deserves to die. He has broken XYZ laws, including trying to kill me twice. He himself, though only for a little while, had borne the ring, and now dimly he guessed the agony of Gollum's shriveled mind and body. Notice, it's not just the shriveled mind. It's his shriveled body too. I mean, most of you guys, you're in your early 20s. You probably don't yet wake up in the morning and your body just creaks. I'm 60. I do. Every time I walk, both knees hurt, even the one I had replaced. 60. It's 1/10 of Gollum's age. He probably just opens his eyes and it hurts. Okay? But it's not just that. It's the mind too that has been eaten by this thing. Unable, enslaved to that ring, unable to find peace or relief ever in life again. I always ask this question. Why does Tolkien throw in those last 3 words in that sentence? Unable to find peace or relief ever in life again. Why doesn't he just finish? Ever to find peace or relief? Doesn't it mean the same thing?
Might he find it after?
Yeah. That's what I wonder. Tolkien said in that one letter, Lord of the Rings is fundamentally a Catholic and religious, or Catholic and philosophical story. He says much more so in the revising than in the writing. And he doesn't mean there, and I tried to bury all this Catholic ideology. He means it naturally came out. I kind of wonder, does he mean, okay, we know Gollum's not going to get any relief here and now, right? Right, he's got moments to live. Might he find peace or relief after life ends, in death? And I don't mean in the sense of, oh, he'll have the great relief and all the pain will be gone, because he won't be anymore. See, we can't even think about this. If you're not here, then there's no peace and relief, right? Because there's nothing. You can only experience peace and relief if there is still some awareness or consciousness or soul or spirit, whatever terminology you want to use. Curse you, you stinking thing, you know. So, Frodo says, bottom of the next page, Sam runs into the Sammath Naur, that is, they make their way up the mountain's kind of shaped like this, and it's like there's a cave in here. The vent comes from here, there's lava, etc. here. They go into the cave, and he sees Frodo. And Frodo stirs and speaks with a clear voice. How long has it been since Frodo has spoken with a clear voice? Before they got into Mordor. I have come, but I do not choose now to do what I came to do. I will not do this deed. The ring is mine. Notice, I. Is that really the I of Frodo speaking, though?
No.
It's not. The ring has utterly possessed him. He's not a wraith yet. Okay? We're told one of the times when Sam picked up Frodo, he is expecting Frodo to weigh a lot because of the burden of the ring. And it was just the opposite. It was like he was light as a feather. Why? As one of my students said, well, they haven't been eating much. True. But there's also because he's being consumed by the ring. And suddenly, he puts the ring on his finger. Notice he says that before putting the ring on. Okay? When he puts the ring on the finger, what does that indicate? Yeah, but it's also, that's the consummation of the words. The ring is mine. Come and get it. All right? And we're told. Sam gets struck in the back, but once Frodo puts on the ring, meanwhile, back in the Tower of Barad-dûr, where Sauron is thinking of the Lords of the West, what does Sauron do? Oh, shh. And he realizes, that Gandalf the Grey, he pulled a fast one on me. He realizes all of his utter folly or foolishness. Why? What did he think no one would ever attempt to do? Destroy the ring. Take the ring. Take the ring he did.
Take it back.
Take it back and destroy it. Why? Who would want to throw away the greatest power there was in the world? I mean, Gandalf could claim it, Galadriel could claim it, Elrond could claim it, Aragorn could claim it. Shoot, for that matter, Faramir could claim it, Eowyn could claim it. She wouldn't be as strong as Sauron, but, she could claim it. And he turns his attitude all towards the ring. And when he does that, what happens to his forces back outside the Black Gate?
They go haywire.
It's like in that one horrible Star Wars prequel movies, the Attack of the Clones or whatever it is. And the one ship out in space gets destroyed, and what happens to all the clones in the battle? They all just die, essentially. Sauron's forces lose their will because it's his will that is animating and forcing them. I kind of think his slaves kind of go, we're free. We give up. We're not fighting you. This is not our battle, And Sam sees Gollum on the edge of the abyss fighting with something. And he hisses words. And then all of a sudden he sees Frodo, and Frodo collapses. And we hear, precious, 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 my precious, oh my precious, as he falls. Okay? He stepped too far, toppled, wavered for a moment on the brink, and then with a shriek he fell. Stepped too far, toppled, wavered for a moment on the brink, and then fell. I've never spent any time talking about this, and we don't have time to talk about it, but what the hell. Why did he waver on the brink? Is that just waver like he's lost balance and he's doing this? Wavering implies an act of will. If you waver to do something, what are you doing? You're waiting. You're holding. You're not quite sure. He wavers for a moment on the brink. He's not over the brink. He hasn't crossed the brink. And then he falls. I've literally, teaching this story 30 years, I've never really thought of that passage. Because it kind of lends even more credence to what I think is happening. There is a roar, a great confusion and noise, fires leaked up, the mountain starts to erupt. Frodo says, well, Sam, this is the end. And he's back himself again. He looks himself. He's, blood spurting out of where his finger had been, And Sam says, I wish I could bind it with something, but now he's gone, that is Gollum, gone now beyond recall, gone forever. Bottom 947. Frodo, yes. But do you remember Gandalf? Now notice, you're sitting here on the ground, the volcano is starting to erupt. Yes, Sam. But do you remember Gandalf's words? Even Gollum may have something yet to do. But for him, Sam, I could not have destroyed the ring. Notice the phrasing. If it were not for Gollum, I could not have destroyed the ring. What's the problem with Frodo's sentence? And he didn't do it.
He wasn't going to.
He didn't do it at all. He didn't even come close to do it. Well, I take that back. He got close to the mountain. He got most of the way up the mountain. And then when push came to shove, he claimed it. But for him, what does that mean? Who achieved the quest? Gollum did. Frodo, in terms of the quest is destroy the ring or die trying. Did Frodo win or lose? Did he achieve or fail? He failed. He failed utterly. Okay? The quest would have been in vain even at the bitter end. So let us forgive him. Why?
Because without Gollum.
Because we're still sucking air. And he's dead. Okay? That's a kind of a crude way of putting it. I think when Tolkien writes this, and I don't mean to beat this horse too dead. I do mean to beat it dead, but I think this is again part of his Catholicism. What's the effect of forgiving Gollum? If one accepts, or if one believes, have any of you ever heard of the novelist Philip Pullman? He wrote his Dark Materials series, Golden Compass, also called Northern Lights, Amber Spyglass, and The Subtle Knife. Golden Compass was made into a film, didn't do well enough, so they didn't do the other two books. When Pullman wrote Golden Compass, late 90s, early 2000s, I thought, this guy's the next Tolkien. I mean, Golden Compass, go out and buy it. It's a great work of fantasy. Set in kind of an alternate, parallel universe to ours, Oxford, England, but it's not quite the same. It's just captivating, all right? But then his next two books, his ideology entirely takes over. And it becomes propaganda. And he's just beating you with this doctrine, essentially. Well, one of the ideas, one of the doctrines, let's say, is when you die, that's it. The you that you think of as you will be no more. You'll just, your atoms will dissipate, and your consciousness, your self, your soul, whatever you want to call it, it's not real. That is merely electrochemical things going on in your brain. That's what some cognitive scientists say, okay? And that's it. End of story, okay? If that's true, then why forgive him? Does it really matter? No. When you forgive somebody, is that good for you or good for the other person? Ideally, it's good for the other person. But within the Judeo-Christian tradition, that then has an effect on you. That's why Christ tells his followers, if you forgive others, what's the next half? Your Father, my Father in heaven, will forgive you. And if you don't forgive others, you won't be forgiven. Go back to Sam's thinking about Gollum. He will not find relief or peace when? In this life. When Frodo says, let us forgive him, that with the other line, I think kind of imply he will have peace and relief. Gollum's redemption. How/why does Gollum die? It goes back to his promise. What did he swear to do?
Protect the precious. Not let Sauron have it.
Not let Sauron have it. And it literally never hit me till 5 minutes ago. His wavering.
I can either not jump or fall.
I can claim the ring back on firm ground, or
Protect it and not let Sauron have it.
die. The ring is destroyed. Sauron doesn't get it back. And what else? If the ring is destroyed and Sauron doesn't get it back, then in one sense, everybody else gets what? They're happily ever after. Literally never made that connection before. Okay? So, what does Frodo think is going to happen at that point? Yeah, we're going to die. We don't have any food, we don't have any water, and the mountain's erupting. And Sam's like, well, we don't have to stay here. We can go outside the mountain and maybe down the pathway a little bit so the lava takes at least a little time to catch us. And they do. And little eucatastrophe, right? The eagles come and rescue them. Water and light, little eucatastrophe. Never a sudden miraculous grace, never to be recounted on, to recur again. I've never asked my students the question, did Galadriel hear? Did somebody pass word what Sam had asked for? Is the file of Galadriel, does it have like a hidden mic inside or something? Or, no idea. Okay? Field of Kermallen, we're going to skip most of. Take that back. We're going to skip all of. Chapter 5, Stewart and the King. Pages 960 to 965, I believe it is. We have what? I can remove all that. What occurs on those pages? Faramir and Éowyn. What about them? The wooing of Éowyn. The courtship of Éowyn. Okay? They're both stuck in the houses of healing. Faramir is the steward of Gondor, left in charge, while Aragorn is away. Aragorn hasn't been enthroned, hasn't been crowned, all that kind of stuff. But Faramir has to do with the steward of the House of Healing orders and commands. But he can also give other orders and commands. And Éowyn says, it'd be really nice to be able to go out and take some air, during the day. Okay? And he says, that's fine. So he tells the steward that, and the steward says, okay. All right. Page 960. They're talking, and Éowyn says to Faramir, I do not desire healing. I wish to ride to war like my brother Éomer, or better, like Theoden the king. That is, die in battle. He says, you can't. You can't follow the captains. They're already way ahead of us. You'll be better prepared if you get well and they lose, because then we can both, what? We can die like you said to Aragorn, you would die when the men don't return for battle. Okay? It's essentially what he says. So she doesn't answer, but he looked at her, and he thinks, something softened a little bit, like I'm starting to get under her skin in a good way, not a bad way, okay? And she asks, when Faramir says, it would ease my care if I could walk with you or just kind of meet up with you out here, on an afternoon. And she says, how? How would that make you feel better? How should I ease your care? I don't desire the speech of living men. Dad's pretty much slamming the door in his face. I don't want to talk to you. Okay, you want my honest answer? Yes. He says, you're beautiful. You are drop dead gorgeous. You are the most gorgeous person in the world. You're more beautiful than all the flowers and blah, 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 blah. Okay? He says, for you, for you and I have both passed under the wings of the shadow. The same hand drew us back. See, he shouldn't have mentioned Aragorn, because that's what she's thinking about. She says, not for me. I still lie under the shadow. But thank you for letting me walk abroad. Okay? And he goes and tells the warden what, they've talked about. So each day they kind of meet up out in the open air. And one day they're standing there and they're looking off in the distance, and she says, that's where the Black Gate is, right? Way off. I can't see it, obviously. He says, yes. And they rode away 7 days ago. Yep. And he says, you have brought me both the joy, this is 962, both the joy and the pain I never thought to know. Joy, because I get to see you every day. Pain, because the fear and doubt of this evil time are grown dark indeed. In other words, I get to see you, I get to talk with you. Pain, why? Because we're probably going to die soon. After to lose so soon what I have found. What did you find? What do you mean? What have you found that you could lose? Nah, let's not talk about it. It's kind of like, maybe she starts getting like, I don't want to talk about romance, She says, I'm waiting for some stroke of doom. He says, yes, we are. We do wait for the stroke of doom. And they don't talk anymore. And it seemed to them, as they stood upon the wall, what do they see? Way off in the distance, this big dark cloud rise up kind of reach out towards them, and then what? Earthquake. The example I used in my first class is, beginning about 2 weeks ago, various newspapers and websites started publishing things about what would happen if a nuclear weapon was detonated in your area. And you can go to a website and you can pick the nuke, the size, and have its epicenter be wherever you want with a map. So, being the damn fool I am, I did Murfreesboro, downtown. What would a 10 or 20, 15 kiloton like Hiroshima, what would that do to where I live about 9 miles from MTSU? Good for me, my house wouldn't be destroyed. Of course, I'd be fried toasty crispy by radiation. But, the house would still survive, so anybody comes later could, move in. And you could do that wherever you want. What's one of the effects of a nuclear explosion? Yeah, you do have the heat, but you've got the shock wave. Now, they don't experience the shock wave, they experience an earthquake. Because what happens when the ring is destroyed? The volcano erupts, the Tower of Barad-dûr is destroyed down to its foundations. And it's like all the Middle Earth goes, like the earth burps, essentially. Right? And they wonder what that was. Faramir, it reminds me of Numenor. She doesn't know what he's talking about. She's never heard of Numenor. And so he explains, when the island of Numenor fell into the earth. Atlantis, anyone? That's where Tolkien gets it from, okay? So she says, oh, so you think the darkness is coming. We lost, in other words. And suddenly she drew close to him. Why? If we're about to die, let me at least hold on to somebody, And he says, no, I don't. And he says to her, Eowyn, Eowyn, White Lady of Rowan, in this hour I do not believe that any darkness will endure. And I think part of that is because she drew close to him, and he's like, yes, And he kisses her on the brow. And what happens seemingly simultaneously? An eagle flies in, not like an eagle you see around here. These are big stinking eagles, like wingspan the size of this room, because you can ride on top of one. All right? And it sings, Sauron is overthrown. And we're told, 964, a day or two goes by, they're invited to go to the fields of Cormallen. That is, to welcome the victors. She doesn't go. And he's like, why aren't you going? Your brother invited you. Do you not know? She replies. He says, 2 reasons that I can think of. I don't know which one's true. She goes, come on, tell me. Why doesn't she just tell him? No, has to play coy, has to, do the old, play kind of hard to get thing. My mentality there. He says, okay, then I'll tell you. You don't go because even though your brother called for you, you wanted Aragorn to call for you. And if Aragorn had said, would the Lady Eowyn like to attend with me? And she'd go, yes, and be there, And you don't want to see him now in his triumph. Or, so that's reason one, or because I don't go and you want to stay here next to me. And he's kind of going, please, big door number two. I wished to be loved by another, but I desire no man's pity. Don't you dare pity me. And he's like, I know you wanted to be loved by Aragorn. Why? Because he is high and puissant, meaning strong, powerful. And you wish to have renown and glory, meaning, really, you wanted to be a powerful queen. Sorry, honey, I ain't a king. You'll never be a queen. I'm not even a prince. Okay? So he says, But when he gave you only understanding and pity, then you desired to have nothing unless death in battle. Look at me. And she looks, and he says, do not scorn pity that is the gift of a gentle heart, Eowyn. I don't offer you my pity. You are a lady high and valiant, blah, 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 blah. Once I pitied your sorrow. Not anymore. Now, were you sorrowless, without fear or any lack, were you the blissful queen of Gondor, he says, still I would love you. And when he's saying that, one of the things that implies is, even though I knew you were unattainable for me. Because who would be the only one attainable for a queen of Gondor? A king of Gondor. He says, I would still love you. Eowyn, do you not love me? Then the heart of Eowyn changed. Or, at last, she understood it. So, it's at that moment her heart changes, or she realizes what her heart is telling her. That is Eowyn's conversion. Literal conversion, changing from one thing into another. She changes from an Anglo-Saxon, Rohirrim-ish, whatever, mindset of only seeking fame and glory in battle to a different mindset. Look at what she says. Oh, and notice, and suddenly her winter passed, and the sun shone on her. I stand in Minas Anor, the tower of the sun, and behold, the shadow has departed. Where was the shadow? Okay, it might be the literal shadow that was out there, Sauron, but what else? Her own shadow. The shadow that was taken over her. Where did the shadow come from? At least partially. Saruman. I will be, and I should say, not just Wormtongue and Saruman, the Rohirrim-ish ideology. I will be a shield maiden no longer, nor vie with the great riders, nor take joy only in the songs of slaying. Okay? So I'm not going to do that anymore. Then look at what she says and compare it with her conversation with Aragorn. I will be a healer and love all things that grow and are not barren. If she's going to be a healer, what is she going to do? Think of the conversation with Aragorn. I am no mere serving woman, she said. If you're going to be a healer, what are you for the people you heal? You are serving them. Talk to any doctor, well, take that back. Talk to any good doctor or nurse, and they will say it is a service. It's the service profession. Why? Because they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it to try to help someone who's not well become well. No longer do I desire to be a queen. That is, I don't want power, honor, and glory. I just want to do what? Be a healer and love all things that grow and are not barren. What did Gandalf tell Denethor when Denethor mentioned about his stewardship of Gondor? He said, I'm a steward also, right? And he said, I will not have wholly failed if even one thing lives and grows. It's the idea of service again. And he says, well, that's good because I'm not a king. Notice she hasn't said, yes, I do love you, madly, deeply, wholly, Yet I will wed with the White Lady of Rohan if it be her will. Okay. And she says, and must I leave my own people, man of Gondor? She's kind of playing with them. I mean, she knows. She's got the leash around his neck and she's going, heal. She's just... So, They agree to get married. Skip a bunch. Many partings. Before many partings, Aragorn gets crowned king. Gandalf has found a little sapling of the white tree that's been dead seemingly for thousands of years. And who helps Gandalf do the crowning of Aragorn? Frodo of the Nine-Fingered. He carries the crown, hands it, Gandalf takes it off the thing and puts it on Aragorn's head. And now we have the king, and what happens immediately after the coronation? Da, 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 da. Aragorn and Arwen are wed. Why? Because they couldn't get married until two things had happened. One, just a little detail that, her father threw to obstruct their marriage. Sauron has to be defeated. Hell must be overcome. Satan's got to be obliterated. Little things. And he has to become king. It can't happen the other way around. He couldn't become king first, and then Sauron's defeated. Why? You don't know that Sauron's going to be defeated. Okay? So, many partings. We start to see the fellowship break up again. They go to Isengard, find out Treebeard has let Saruman loose because he doesn't think Saruman can harm anyone or anything. He's lost all his powers. And Gandalf says, he snookered you, man. He still has the power of his voice. Okay? They run into Saruman, page 983. What does Gandalf offer Saruman? Another chance. Saruman turns against it. Okay? Frodo offers, if Frodo had pipeweed, he'd give him some, but he doesn't. Merry gives him some of his. Cool. They keep going. Aragorn and Arwen had already gone back home. Elrond and the others have headed north. So now we just have Gandalf, Sam, Frodo, Merry, and Pippin. They make their way to Bree. And at the end of that chapter, page 996, they find out there's bad things going on in the Shire. And Merry says, well, we've got you with us. No, Gandalf says, I'm not going with you. Why? He tells them, you must settle the Shire's affairs. This is what you have been trained for. Like everything that's happened to you over the last several months, nearly a year, Gandalf kind of implies it's all happened for one reason, to prepare you for this situation. Okay? What's Gandalf going to do? He's going to go talk to Tom Bombadil. He says, I am going to, his exact words, such a talk as I have not had in all my time. And I kind of can't help but think that Gandalf's going to go, he's going to knock on Tom's door, and Tom's going to welcome in, and he's going to say, Master, who are you? And Tom's finally going to, or he's going to fall down on his knees, and, one of those. So we get the scouring of the Shire, which we're going to skip all of, except for the very end. Last page. Who do they meet? Last two pages. Who's in the Shire? Saruman is now in control, but he doesn't go by Saruman. What's he go by? Sharky. Like, picture shark, all the teeth, Where's Lothos, Sackville Baggins, who bought the house when Frodo left?
Dead.
How dead? I mean, how did he become dead? Or what has happened to him since you died? Was he buried? Sharky implies that Wormtongue got hungry and ate him. Yeah, I noticed the eyes go, whoop. Like, what? Okay. What does Frodo say should be done to Saruman? Let him go. Even after Saruman tries to strike Frodo, let him go. He says, I do not want him slain in this evil mood. Okay. And what else? He was great once, of a noble kind, this is page 1019, that we should not dare to raise our hands against. He was once so high and mighty, it's not our right. He also says, he is fallen, and his cure is beyond us. But I would still spare him in the hope he may find it. This is the second to the last chapter. Go to the second chapter at the beginning of the novel. Gandalf says, Gollum is not beyond cure. I hope he will find it. He parallels these two things. And Frodo said at that point, he deserves death. Now, Frodo has adopted Gandalf's mentality. At the Grey Havens, two things we don't have time, but we're going to do it anyways. 10:25. Sam finds Frodo hunched over in pain. Why? And he's better shortly thereafter. He remembers the next day that was October 6th. The day Frodo was in pain was October 6th. 2 years to the day after Frodo was stabbed in the arm by the captain of the Nine. We're also told that in March of every year, Frodo also takes to his bed. Why? Because that's when he was bitten by Shelob. Okay? We didn't talk about it. The ring is destroyed on March 25th. Tolkien says in one of his letters, why? That's the Feast of the Annunciation in the church. That's when Mary heard from the angel Gabriel, you're going to have a son. 9 months later, Christmas. Tolkien also said in that same letter, I think it's a guy named Bishop Usher, who said March 25th, 4004 BC, was when the world was created. And he's kind of like, well, that kind of works. Why? What happens as a result of the ring?
New age.
Fourth age, the age of men. Okay? Very last thing. I know it's time's over. Frodo goes to the Grey Havens to leave. Why does he go to Valinor? Think Gollum. Because he could not find peace and relief in this world. So he has to go to Valinor. Arwen gave him her place, right? Who else goes? We see Bilbo. Gandalf goes. Why? His work's done. Galadriel and Celeborn go. Elrond goes. Okay. Who do they meet also? Who also do they meet at the Grey Havens? Why do Merry and Pippin show up? Is it to say goodbye to Frodo?
So Sam doesn't go home alone.
Because that's a long journey. And he doesn't want Sam to be overcome with despair. Look at the ending that Sam gets. It's the kind of good ending story that Sam talks about in Cirith Ungol for those who are inside of story. He gets the happily ever after. He gets the domestic bliss. Frodo gets the happily ever after good ending story for those who are outside the story. Frodo does get his healing, but not here. Okay, I'm going to make a couple comments on Thursday, literally no more than 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll do all of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. It's a lot faster reading than this, believe me.